Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Our today's discussion is about next most important thinker, Thomas Hill Green. Period of Thomas Hill Green was 1836 to 1882. The English idealist school belongs effectively with Green. T.H. Green belongs to English idealist school of thought. T.H. Green joined Balliol College, Oxford, and remained there till the end of his life. He was appointed first as a tutor at college. He taught history, ethics, metaphysics, logic, and history of philosophy. In 1878, he was appointed professor of moral philosophy. T.H. Green was not a philosopher, but he also participated practically in state affairs. He was elected as a member of Oxford Town Council and remained there for many years. He remained member of various commissions. He also became the president of Oxford Band of Hope Union. He also worked as an active member of Liberal Party. If we examine about his contribution, then we find out that there was a great influence of his contributions on modern idealist thinkers. T.H. Green wrote about the Industrial Revolution, capitalism, and economic individualism, on impacts of lives of working class. All these his contribution become very important. Particularly, he wrote about economic, social, and moral point of view, the division between rich and poor, and between capitalist and labor class was wide. The industrial supremacy of Britain has begun to be dominated by the other European countries. These conditions called for increased state activities without destroying the liberty of the individual. This found expression in English idealism. When we discuss about Thomas Hill Green, then we find out that T.H. Green was inspired by four different sources. He was inspired Plato's Republic, but he criticized Plato's theory of communism of family and property. Number two, he inspired by Aristotle's Ethic and Politics, and his saying that man is by nature a social and political animal. But he also criticized Aristotle's defense of slavery. Number three, he also inspired by German idealist Kant, Hegel, and utilitarian J.S. Mill and Rousseau. And number fourth, non-conformists. All these basic sources remained influenced in his writings. His major contributions, his major works, his major books, major writings were: number one, lectures on principles of political obligation. It was published in 1882 after his death. This book contained his lectures which he delivered in 1879 to 80. His lectures provided philosophical foundation to the new liberalism and also for the state intervention in social and economic matters. Then he wrote about liberal legislation and freedom of contract. It was also published after his death, which contained the lectures delivered by Green during the year of 1880. Number three, Lectures on English Revolution. It was also published after his death, which contained the lectures delivered by him regarding English Revolution. And number fourth, he also wrote about prolegomena or to ethics in 1883. First of all, we examine his views about the state. T.H. Green gives his theory of state in his book entitled Principles of Political Obligations. He says that the state is natural growth with an ethical end through spirit. It is a product of human consciousness. Human consciousness postulates liberty, and liberty involves rights, and rights demand state. He says that man is self-conscious and his conditions of consciousness are united by his self, which gives him rationality. He further explained that man is not only self-conscious but also consciously self-realizing. He wants to achieve self-perfection, and the liberty is the primary end to this end. T.H. Green says that individual has self-will as well as goodwill. The state can interfere in the self-will, which while it cannot interfere in realization of goodwill by performing constructive functions. Liberty can only be liberty for good will. Man is conscious about his self-perfection as well as perfection of others. He further explained ends of the state. Green has never considered the state as a means to itself, but as a means to an end, in spite of fact that the state was embodiment of spirit. The end was to achieve the self-perfection and full moral development of the individuals who composed of it. Every man has worth and dignity, which forbids his exploitation for any purpose whatever. He says that the life of the nation has no real existence as the life of individuals. He further explained that any progress of a nation excluding individual is without meaning. In this context, he regarded the function of state also as a negative. According to him, the state cannot teach morality to men, nor can make their moral, since the morality consists in its self-imposed duties. It is very important point during this discussion. He further explained that state can remove obstacles which prevent men from becoming moral. In order to remove obstacles, the state can interface the affairs of individuals, which is positive function of the state. While discussing about negative role of the state, T.H. Green assigns a significant negative role to the state. He defines the state actions which were never be defined by the utilitarian. The state can do everything which will help, and it can do nothing which will hinder the free development of moral philosophy. The real function of government is to maintain conditions, better conditions of life in which morality shall be possible. The government can do its best to make it impossible by narrowing the room for the self-imposition of duties and for the play of disinterested motives. He insisted that institutions exist for men and not men for institutions. He established the importance of individual for state, and state is not something more than the sum total of the wills of its citizens. Now we discuss most important aspect, most important part of T.H. Green's philosophy, and that is about people's will. T.H. Green believes in general the will of peoples. He says that general will is the basis of the state. Legal sovereignty must reside in the supreme authority in the state. Behind the legal sovereignty is the general will, which really determines the habitual obedience of people. The people only obey those institutions which represent the general will. T.H. Green was also against monastic state. T.H. Green was fully conscious about the monastic state. He has no liking for such states as they could not fulfill their ideal functions. He rejected the view of Rousseau that general will was absent in all existing states. He also rejected the view of Hegel that the laws were synonymous with general will. He tried to safeguard the individual against monastic state. He says that freedom is the right of a man to make the best himself. This is the voluntary identification of self with the laws of the state. He says that will, not the force, is the basis of the state, and this is integral part of his whole philosophy. This is heart of his philosophy. So his major contribution as an idealist English thinker was his most famous quotation, will, not the force, is the basis of the state. So due to these views, he is against the monastic state. Next most important point regarding the theory of the state. T.H. Green had accepted organic theory of state only with many qualifications. He regarded the state as natural, since man is necessarily social animal. Freedom is not the absence of restraint but a process of self-development by freely obeying the rational laws and customs. The state is essentially good because it is indispensable to guide and enable men to understand their moral obligations. He taught men to see that faith in their own moral development and faith in matters of their fellow men for their particular interest. In his distinction between outward acts and inward will, between better doing and wrong doing, he gave men a far sounder criterion whereby to judge state action from the self and other regarding action. So, overall, T.H. Green explains that every state can be judged by its practical and ideal contents. It is good state if it contains the largest possible number of happy and moral human beings. Next most important point of Hegel's theory of state is that, T.H. Green, not Hegel. T.H. Green next most important point regarding the discussion of the state is T.H. Green also imposes some limitation on the state. Number one, he completely discards the absolutism of the state, and he does not conceive political organization as an end in itself. Instead, he pleads that state must aim at fuller realization of common good. Number two, the state must not be omnipotent because it has internal and external limitations. Internally, it is limited because it must confine itself to the negative function of removing hindrances to good life. Externally, the state is limited by international law. The state adjusts for each its system of rights internally, and it adjusts each system of rights to the rest externally. That is very important point of this discussion. Last, he absolutely rejects the justification of war, and state must preserve its order and peace. Now we examine his next most important part of his philosophy about individuals' rights. T.H. Green clearly spotted that state is a natural growth which, with its purposes and aims of purely ethical basis. Individual rights were not the result of social contract, but these were the necessary conditions of free moral will and were presented by the crystallization of the general moral will into law. He explained that right is a certain liberty of action claimed by an individual as necessary for pursuing ideal objects and developing his capacities of reason and will. He rejected not only social contract theory and utilitarianism and its basic principles, but also the doctrine of natural rights. The idea that human being is born with certain liberties and certain vested interests in material things to use them, or that they possessed such liberties and claims in some pre-social condition and retains them as legal and moral rights after entering organized society, and that they can be compatible with his pre-social or natural rights. T.H. Green, as a great idealistic philosopher, clearly explains his views about the rights of individuals. He further explained natural rights are rights which should be enjoyed by a normally rational and moral man living in a rationally constituted society. They belong only to man capable of being influenced by the idea of a common good and are effective only in a society whose members recognize a common good as contributing to their own idea good. These are the conditions under which the realization of moral capacity of a man is made possible. A next most important part of T.H. Green's philosophy is his right of resistance. T.H. Green also gave citizens right of resistance, but with specific conditions. Ordinarily, an individual has no right of resistance against the state because all his rights emanate from the state and cannot be used to resist and destroy the state. In certain exceptional circumstances, T.H. Green gave an individual has the right of resistance against the state provided his resistance is meant for the betterment and benefit of the people. Then he explained that an individual does not have any right of resistance against a law merely because the law requires him to perform something which is in contraventions of his judgment. He must regard a definite social good as obtainable through successful resistance. He must be fully convinced that a substantial part of the community share his opinion. In other words, resistance to government authority is a right where there is a general recognition that such resistance will promote a public good. Then the political consideration must be given to the consequences of the successful resistance if the indications are that disregard of a law or a revolt against the government will result in general disorder, the resistance may not be justifiable. So, we must recognize that T.H. Green assigned the right of resistance to the peoples only and only in specific conditions when state and government not fulfilling their basic duties for the betterment of the peoples. To quote the Barker, on the one hand, the rights of which Green speaks are so far related to law, and they can be and are ultimately embodied in law, and they are so few related to morality that their value lies in their services to moral end, and their source is to be found in the moral consciousness of the man. Next important right which he assigned to peoples is his right of property or his views on property. T.H. Green sports a liberal view of property. He does not plead this theory being neither an extreme socialist. He is an ardent advocate of private property. He finds the chief source of abuses of private property in the origin of land ownership and in the abundant liberties bestowed to the owners. He defended property in form of capital but attacked landed aristocracy. The capital provided the wages for laborers and remained in circulation for the use of common man. While landed aristocracy had no such utility, he regarded the inequality of property as necessary price for free action. While discussing about his rights about property, T.H. Green's theory of property rights is unique in its character, but it is difficult to follow. So there is there so therefore it is not practicable in the practical life. Next most prominent part of T.H. Green's philosophy is his theory about war. T.H. Green, unlike German idealist Hegel, holds that war is never an absolute right, it is a relative right or a crucial necessity. It is a wrong action, though often wars were waged to justify the rectification of wrong action of others. War is not attribute of a perfect state, but it is sign of imperfection of a state. Perfection of states would lead to end of wars. T.H. Green says that war cannot be wholly justifiable, but it denies a man's basic right of free life. The less the war, more were the chances of free intercourse of the people of different states. T.H. Green admits that war has certain advantages like patriotism, self-sacrifice, and heroism, but the war also makes many destructions, not only material destruction of the state, but also violations of different human beings by their precious lives. War is not a solution for solving the national and international problems. He does not believe that war is essential for maintaining national integrity and for developing nationalism among the peoples. T.H. Green also believes certain evils of war, and the war denies the right to life to the citizens. Therefore, war is against the interest of the people and is not desirable. The state which recognizes the necessity of war and wages war is not a perfect state. War is an evil and should be treated so. The war makes destruction of man's life by man. There are no circumstances when war could be justified, but it is an accepted fact that war is a wrong act. Green did not agree with Hegel that war is in any way a necessity. Green recognizes that no person has a right to kill anybody or deprive him of his right to life. The killing of the people in the war is not justifiable in any way. Green says that states avoid to perform their proper duties due to the wars. War is the failure of the state to protect lives of the people. So, T.H. Green was against the wars and believed that the wars should be eradicated by the states for international peace and security. In his words, the more complete the organization becomes, the more motives and accessions of international conflicts tend to disappear while the bond of unity become stronger. During this discussion, we very clearly find out that uh, unlike Hegel, T.H. Green, as a idealist thinker, he promoted the idea of international organization, and he greatly contributed to the maintenance of peace and security all over the world. This was a major contribution of the T.H. Green. Now we briefly examine about T.H. Green's views about the theory of punishment. And T.H. Green imposes greatest restriction on the state authority which has the claim to punish the criminals. In punishing a criminal, the state uses the force against antisocial element who has violated the established social rights of citizens. The main object of the punishment is not to give pain on criminals in proportion to his moral guilts, for it is very different to assess this proportion. T.H. Green clearly explain that the purpose of punishment is maintenance of system of rights and duties, and its effect are both direct and individual. Directly, the punishment is a force against the antisocial elements. Indirectly, it is a shock which make possible the criminal's reformation of his own will. Um, After examining T.H. Green's different theories, his views about state, his views about different basic rights of individuals, his views about overall betterment of state, a good life of state, and his different aspects as an idealist thinker. Now we conclude this topic. While concluding T.H. Green's topic, we mention here that T.H. Green was deeply influenced by various political philosophers, and as I have earlier explained that his philosophy was inspired by Greek thinkers, by J.S. Mill, by Rousseau, by Hegel. So influences of different philosophers' views can be traced out in the philosophy of T.H. Green. As an English thinker, he loved traditions and wanted to adjust his ideas as well as philosophies of revolutionaries accordingly. Therefore, his political philosophy was well balanced and advanced. So, the later thinkers interpreted his philosophy according to their own convenience. T.H. Green made liberalism a faith which was the need of the time. The English people wanted to adopt liberalism without sacrificing their established customs, conventions, and traditions, and Green successfully accomplished this task. He also made individualism moral and social, and idealism civilized and safe. He idealized the state as being the association of associations, but not made it Leviathan of Hobbes. There were no pre-social rights of individuals, but the rights were the product of society. Thus he solved the problem of rights versus state. Many writers, many philosophers appreciated T.H. Green's contributions about the importance of individual rights, and particularly T.H. Green clearly explained the circumstances of industrial revolution, and in the light of that circumstances he tried his best to protect individuals all basic rights in the state. That is why he highlighted that will, not force, is the basis of the state. So that is the end of our today's discussion.